It's real. The dev said the Kiyru would never be in a fighting game is because he would never hit a woman. Well, while that has sexist undertones, you know what? If a man has principles and he's willing to stand by them, good on you, Kiyru. If you genuinely are like, I will only beat up a guy who has a cool Yakuza tattoo and is willing to throw his jacket off and be bare chested, which a woman can't just do, you know what? Kudos for him. I like the idea of like a woman tries to do it. He walks over to the little tape deck that's like playing. And he's like, no. Like they're in the animated cutscene where everything is bespoke animations, and he clicks it off, and he just stands there back in game street mode where they spin awkwardly and everything. Ugh. I just like shit like that. You can call me any time of day for cool stuff like that. Art. Anyway, Inco got his face smashed in by a door. What a guy. I predictably had to sit through Dr. Nickett taking down all three adults as if they were kids that got their hand caught in the cookie jar. I felt bad for them. Well, Randy more than Mom and Dad. But it was admittedly pretty amusing. Unfortunately, even I didn't escape the shakedown as the injured party, with Dr. Nickett explaining to me that I had literally just taken neck damage and... Oh, wait. With Dr. Nickett explaining to me that I had just taken literal brain damage. Literal brain damage. It's because of the L's. Literal brain damage. It severely injured my neck. That further traumas to my head could exacerbate my injuries or even kill me. He's right, of course, but it didn't feel fair to me all the same. When the situation calmed down and he left, we found ourselves in a new, simmer awkward. Randy had taken his vigil, as he had previously in the chair next to the bed. My parents had taken seats near the door. I think the very fact that they didn't fight him on that annoyed Randy all the more. Yeah, Randy is probably, he's like, you're not even gonna fight for your fucking kid? What is wrong with you people? Do you care about this child? Or can I just buy him from you for $50? Here's $50. He's mine. And that's the bad part. My parents were now brought up to speed with my newfound condition, and told both of them that I do have a problem, okay? I get this, right? Like, oh no, you really shouldn't get your head injured any further. The problem is, there's a slight comedic angle to this, okay? It really does feel like it's slightly played for laughs, which now is not the time, and now, I don't know, like, the presentation is a bit too laxical, you know? Inco is being too much levity for what really should be, like, a really bad moment. You know? The tone isn't there. You know, it's not a big problem. Like, the text is fine. The tone is just a little askew. Also weird for, like, a drop-off point. Again, like, lines like these kind of... You can fix this really easily, but whatever. Anyway, let's move on. My parents brought up to speed on my newfound condition, and both of them and Randy... and told both of them and Randy about some tentative details of my treatment plan going forward. Mom and Dad originally began to protest that Randy was a little involved, but they clammed up pretty quick when I informed them that I added him as an emergency contact and acting guardian in their absence, and how he had actually showed up. Dad was quite put out by that retort, but every time Mom saw me have to write down my answers and questions, she looked one step closer to crying. At that moment, there was a calm, but uneasy silence. Interestingly, Dad was the one to break the silence first. So, Mr. Payne, how come you know our son? Well, Dr. Snape... That felt like such a... You know what? We'll go with Snape. I know very little about Snape. I know, like, the approximations of his voice. Not that I can do them, I just know what he's supposed to, He's supposed to sound like he's trying his best. I need to sound like I have an entire kiwis lodged in my throat. Would you like to buy a house? I have recently acquired one. So, Mr. Payne, how come you know our son? I like how his dad's tone of voice isn't explained, which is fair, because I don't think Inco would even know. Well, your boy is friends with my son. Over the last few months, they spent a lot of time together, especially over at our place. I see. How are you going to handle this, Mr. Potter? Dad, this isn't a magic school. Oh. Another silence. Okay, like, I get it, it's back and forth, but be a little clearer when you clear the backlog. How do you know our son, Mr. Potter? Isn't Isn't your son Mr. Potter? I'm sorry, I lose track very easily. I need to take my little spadol. Tasty, tasty riddle. Well, Inco never really said, but what is it that you two do that occupies your time so much? Must be quite an intensive career path. Now, I, on the other hand, I make propane and propane accessories, if you would like to buy some. I heard you have a nice yard. Well, we are co-partners at an architecture design firm. We cooperate with companies and individuals to design unique high-concept designer buildings. Usually skyscrapers or specialty office buildings. Because we run the firm and coordinate with contractors and local development and government bodies, we travel a lot. Dad explained. It's Como! It's Como in the house, in the house, in the house. I don't know why, but the Genie in the House song is stuck in my head. I don't know. It was a show that I could tell that I didn't even know if I liked it. I just know that I watched it when it was on. Como, I'm mad at Zyla again because all Zyla does is show up in the chat, complain about stuff, and then move on, and they haven't talked to me in forever, and we haven't set up a game, and I didn't get a game yesterday. Tabletop, off the table. I'm pissed. I'm angry. Instead, I had to spend all the fucking time moving furniture. Ugh. I'm so angry. Oh, I'm stomping my little fees. And you don't take your son with you? Almost done with season 1 of the show. What show? What show are you watching? You can't just leave me in the dark, buddy. I need to be more assertive with perhaps. But on the other hand, I get to be a righteously indignant asshole if I don't. Como, I have too much to lose. Also, I'm very tired. And for the most part, I've been trying to focus on a lot of things for myself, like my writing and stuff, and it's just going nowhere. Oh, you're making. Oh, yeah, you're doing... Well, good to hear that's coming along, then. I can't wait to see your producer credit and point at it like SpongeBob. Look, I know that guy. I know him. I come up to Hollywood in the red carpet, and they're like, what did you do for this movie? And I just point at a guy 2 rows down. I know that guy. I'm not with him because he said I smell, but hey. Roll for impact. You know what? This moment is very, very... Roll for impact, YouTube. Frost and Fur. The Fall. Doesn't look half bad, all things considered. Well, it's nice to know that you have some work. Alright, let's get back to it. You don't take your son with you? Of course we do. I think he means on our routine business meeting, sweetie. Mrs. Potter. My mom's face turned a bright red. Well, yeah, your son did mention that your family moves fairly regularly. As you said, I was a bit more curious about the lack of availability on short notice, like the current circumstances, Randy clarified. Well, Inco has always been quite self-sufficient. We used to have a nanny on the payroll, but with all the moving around and Inco soon to be an adult, it felt like it stopped being useful at a certain point. He never expressed displeasure at not being able to travel with us, and obviously his ongoing education and social interactions he has are important for his development. Even Randy couldn't completely fault that line of logic, and he nodded at the answer. Still, this isn't the first time we attempted to get a hold of you while your son was in less than ideal circumstances. Oh? An annoyed huff from Randy. Your son, nearly freezing over after his girlfriend broke her wheelchair, was one such occasion. We had to pick him up, and he stayed out at our place since you couldn't be contacted, and the weather made walking home not an option. Mom gasped again, and my dad's brow furrowed. I don't believe this. Like, are his parents just that clueless? Is that possible? I don't know. I don't want it to be nice. I want it to be a little bit, no, stop making a big deal out of nothing. Because they've always been that way. They've always said it's not a big deal. Why would they suddenly make it a big deal? You have to break them down if you want to get there. And I know this is kind of like that moment, but I want a little bit more. I want a little more simmer. I want a little bit more splash, But that's me. I want my shit spelled out. When he was sick and he passed out while his girlfriend was trying to nurse him back to health, and she called my wife for help. We used to have a nanny on payroll, Mr. Potter, but it became a liability after we found out she was making polymorph potions on the side. Apparently, my son had turned into a cockroach and cleaned out the kitchen. Not that I complain, his initiative is astounding. But I find the fact that she was unwilling to pay us our cut disappointing. Heads lowered further. And most importantly, when he fell down the stairs and nearly died, I'm pretty sure Inco would have preferred waking up with his parents by his bedside. You're a loser. The last words of that raised just below a yell. I raised a hand and placed it on Randy's arm. He held his gaze at my parents for a moment longer, then with a harumph, deflated into the chair. My parents weren't bad people, but they didn't really have a defense for themselves here. This was, admittedly, a talk I should have had with them a long time ago. But until recently, I was a spineless doormat of a person. And now, though, they were here, they were paying attention to me, and frankly, I don't think Randy was going to let them escape anytime soon. Unfortunately, they brought an escape rope. You fool! They can leave the hospital instantaneously by jumping out the window. I took a long, steady inhale, held it, and then exhaled. Then I scrawled on my notepad. Why isn't it just a proper physical notepad? You could put stickers on it! Do you guys want to know how my year was so far? Mom and Dad gave each other a look before looking back at me, and then looking up as they looked up. And then their snouts, wait a second. Ah, shit, it's the wrong story again. Give me a firm, resolute nod. Alright then, I survived being honest with Randy. I survived this. I did abridge certain things for Mom and Dad. The sad reality is that they didn't know me that well, so they didn't need the gory details for every bit. I told them about my experiences at school, the rough early days, finding friends in Damien, Liz, and Olivia, the cookout at the Pains, Olivia opening up and becoming one of the best friends I've ever had, about Iadakon, about his death, about how it led to me and Olivia being together, and also how I drove us apart. When I finally got to the formal, it was the most cut-down part of all. I explained the parts that were easy, relatively. Me pushing on Olivia about the eulogy, dancing with a bully instead of her, and confronting her on the stairs. I left out some of the parts that might have been too much for the semi-strangers called my parents to stomach, like the pictures during her eulogy, or me, echoing every atrocious thing everyone's ever said to Olivia before the end. They still somewhat cared for me, Mom and Dad, and they didn't need to realize, not yet at least, that their behavior, their means of raising me, had helped create a monster. Well, by all accounts, didn't deserve what mercy he was already receiving. Part of it was to spare them, and part of it was to spare me. Throughout, Randy piped in and provided some details he knew whenever I had to pause to keep writing, or let my crammed hand rest. Yeah, you need a couple of good days relaxing, buddy. Actually, it will be a charisma persuasion check. Because in 5e you roll ability checks, and you happen to use a proficiency if applicable. So there are no persuasion checks, there are stat persuasion checks. If you're talking about 3.5, I think diplomacy exists in 4e, and there's intimidation loose. In 3.5, it's bluff, intimidation, diplomacy? I feel like there's another one, but that might be them. And before that, there really isn't a case for it. You might as well call it diplomancy. By the way, for the record, it is charisma, open round brackets, persuasion, close round brackets. If you want to be 100% on fleek. The only thing killing the fucking mood for the story is me. How can I complain about the mood if I'm the one ruining it? Throughout, Randy he quickly took notice of my curated version of the truth, and Frank rapped at Jesus went along with it. He let me spin my parent-approved version of the winter formal unassisted. I would have told them the whole story. I would tell them the whole story, eventually, but not yet. It was a delicate balance to maintain if I was going to make things right. No one could argue that this was his own form of gross manipulation, but for now, it was what it was. I also kept an eye on them, as I explained. Slowly growing mortification. Man, you really like this. Word of the day. on both of their faces as they took in everything that was apparent. It started out miffed at how school was handled gym class, sure. But it progressed to looking genuinely happy I'd found friends and even a girlfriend. Bye-bye, Como! I believe in you. You can do it. I put up my little fists and I punched at the air because I believe in you, and the way to communicate that is to violently assert oneself. I don't think the Wizard Federation will be on board for a new spell class for diplomacy. Listen, considering how many wizards turn out to be Dark Lords, I think they should work on, like, friendship classes. Like, maybe get Twilight to do a guest curriculum or something. I feel like a lot of disasters could have been prevented if people just made friends more often. It says something about society more than the people who get bad at that point, you know. Once you get your 5th Dark Lord, it's no longer just bad apples. You have something else going on, buddy. But that joy wasn't to last, as my retelling spiraled, and so did their mood. By the end, they had their hands clasped together, my mom quietly shuddering, and my father with a 1,000-yard stare. Somewhat sad that this was the most intimately connected we'd been for a long time. When I finally finished and lay back in bed, I let out a long, low sigh. Okay, hop pot done. Let's see where the dice landed. Randy offered me a reassuring pat on the shoulder as if to say, "You did good, kid." He wasn't really wrong, actually. Exactly. But I should have enough of a spine to confront him about the issues they were helped fomenting long ago. Better late than never, I guess. I mean, I think late in the context of traumatic brain injury, Mom and Dad were quiet for a time. And then once my mother had calmed enough as they drew close and whispered to each other. That annoyed Randy a little because he didn't have Anon's telescopic ears. Given how a frown began to creep onto his face, but a pat on his arm for attention, a dismissive wave of my hand told him it was not worth fighting over. Meanwhile, at the Wizard Factory, guess we'll make Dark Lords now. Harry, we figured out the way to stop Dark Lords is to just make everyone a Dark Lord, so they'll just try killing each other all the time. Sure, it keeps the population stagnant, but I consider it a problem solved, if anything. Don't show any of my art to my mother. Ugh. He was annoyed they were having a little powwow right in front of me, about me, without me. It was fair. They had been deeply entwined in a business relationship together much more than they were in raising me. It's just how that duo worked. Nothing to do about it right now. After their private discussion, they broke away from one another and finally, together, approached the bed. They leaned over the side of us, both of them. My heart rate began to pick up, unsure where this was going, and for the first time I could remember they pulled me into an embrace. And then they stabbed me like good old Kaiser. Opinion isn't written like that, Safi. That's opium. That doesn't mean anything. They probably squeezed me too much given my injured condition, but I didn't really care in the moment. I was struck with confusion, but also an almost touch-starved sensation. Like, until then, I'd never really been shown kindness. I was wrong, of course. Pain had shown me a similar level of familiar love, and Olivia and I had our moments of intimacy. Even my parents used to be a bit more caring to me when I was a baby. When he was a babu. Babu! But getting it from my blood and bone parents after so long almost broke me. Why would you care? Like, here's the thing that I have, right? What does your... This makes sense for people when their parents occupy their headspace. And I'm like, Inco, you've adopted Randy at this point. Like, eh? Like, it feels more like you're doing it because you're supposed to than... You know, I get the feeling that Inco would just go, and I didn't feel anything. Because they never raised me. You know, I vaguely remember, but, like, everyone who raised me in the last few months have been Iadakon and Randy and Olivia and Damien and Liz. And, like, all that love, that true love from them has shunted out the little love for my parents. I mean, that's tragic. A whole different kind of tragedy, but also probably not appropriate. The story's got way too much going on as is, but Randy gave us a little space, so I felt the tears again. It was happening a lot lately. It's probably the brain damage. There were a lot of times that clearly called for it, too. Mom whispered apologies into my ear. The backlog of a decade of neglect that finally caught up with the three of us. Dad didn't say anything. He's too manly to actually solve his fucking problems. But the tears flowing from his cheeks showed that he was rocked by all of this all the same. After we had our surprisingly therapeutic cry session, my parents let me go. They looked almost as bad as I was. Eyes red and puffy, Mom's hair a complete mess. How the hell did that happen? I could tell that the realization of what them just buying off my quiet childhood compliance had led to, even if only for a small part. That's good, I think. Honestly, when I was putting together my tentative fix everything plan, I didn't spare a thought for my parents. I had foreseen me finally getting out of the hospital, being home, and them finally walking through the door after yet another trip going, "Oh, Inco, you're back from your coma, good." And the day would go on as normal. Yeah, why would you give a shit about your parents at that point, buddy? You've already resigned them off as, like, a footnote in your fucking life. It's weird. It's like, why would you have this deep connection to your family if they don't do anything for you? Right? Like, you do know that people that are like, my parents, you know, there are gay people, right, who go, fuck my parents, I'm done with them. They haven't done shit. They have just always been the biggest thorn in my side. They don't like me. I guess that point hasn't been reached yet, but it still feels weird. That Inco would have this deep connection with people that he, again, has called strangers. Like, this feels to me, right? The problem is, to me, this feels like that, and we're gonna take a slight detour. This feels like I come from a conservative background, and family means a lot to the Christian worldview, and I'm like, fuck you, that's not how people work. And it feels to me like it's trying to have that cake and eat it too, when it doesn't, it's not there yet. Like, family isn't a magical connection. It's that you've been with them for fucking years that gives them that connection and power over you. It doesn't happen because, you know, blood. That doesn't do anything. Doesn't matter. Never did. And that's what makes me so angry. You're trying to shortcut something cool. For political reasons, which is the worst reason to do it. Actually, that's the best reason to do it, because politics tend to be very deeply entwined with the concept of art, since art is ultimately the expression of the individual, and the individual is ultimately shaped by their environment, which is shaped by politics and policy. But what do I know? That was certainly not how I saw it going down, but I couldn't say I was all upset. If anything, Inco, this just complicates shit. Your parents getting involved is going to add a whole nother layer of shit to deal with. I wasn't sure how things would shake out with my direct family in the long term, but this was definitely a step in the right direction. We had a lot of talking yet to do, a lot of things to work on. It may never fully be repaired, but progress was progress, and I was happy having any kind of emotional support by now. I think we should pull you from St. Hammond, Dad said, breaking my train of thought. No, he didn't break it, man. He fucking derailed that shit. What? What? Huh? Are you stupid? Do you know how to read? The room? Mom, Randy, and I was seemingly in agreement in our shock. Clearly things aren't good there. We should move him somewhere less packed with trauma. Somewhere that can help him with his new needs and give him room to recover without characters like this Ben and Mia. Severus Snape, you fool! You're just making the Dark Lord! God damn it, Dad. He wasn't wrong, notionally. Man, I'm learning so many words today. In a way that exists only as an idea, not as something material. Nice! But this wasn't the time to suddenly have fatherly care. I'm trying to fix the mess I made. I immediately took to scribbling things down, but as I went to work, Randy inserted himself into the moment. Mr. Nito, I understand the sentiment, but, well, as the man that's been watching your boy for the last 2 months, and most importantly, the last few days, may I give my 2 cents on the matter? Dad turned to scrutinize Randy. That is a train... Motherfucker, you did not just stop his train of thought. You didn't break it. You didn't derail it. You crashed into the main station, killing 50 on the station alone. In fact, you hit a whole separate train. I mean, admittedly it did, because like Inco's not the only one who was confused. So 3 trains were hitting the same crash. Dad turned to scrutinize Randy. I could see his eyes squinting, his brow. Man, every brow is fucking furrowing today, huh? Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. He hadn't really looked at Randy before, but whatever dumb, dormant, fatherly instincts Dad had were finally kicking in, and he was in his own weird way trying to protect his son. Oh shit! They're gonna throw down! And the outsider was threatening that. Fine, Dad allowed after a moment. God dang it, I got 3 kids at home. I know what it's like to be a working parent like you two. As Inco explained, Damien's my son, and Olivia is Inco's girlfriend. Inco's had deep ties with my family now, and you see, and Inco, he become like family. When you two are unavailable, you spend time over at our place, with his friend and girlfriend. My wife and I are more than happy to accommodate him. Mom and Dad quietly considered his words. Those old black and white movies. Oh, I heard about those. Where they would organize like train crashing for fun. Now, I don't mean to be rude, but I've seen more of your son over the last few months than you have going off of Inco's recollection. So if you want my perspective, here's what's best for Inco. You need to let him fix his mistakes. You heard the story. Sure, St. Ham being a place for several kids this year, but Inco's taking ownership of his part of making that hurt. Dang. Like, fair point. Also, like, Inco is like 18, 19. I don't know, Dad. Maybe you should fuck right off at doing this again. I stopped scrawling my sales pitch at this point and just let Randy speak. He was saying everything I was planning to, after all. Mom looked around about Dad as they heard Randy talk. I'm pretty sure your parents are gonna fucking die if they try. Your son is an adult. Soon he'll leave school. He'll leave the nest, and he'll be off on his own. He told me before he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with his life, and that the future is uncertain. But I can tell you what for. Learning to put in honest, hard work to fix your mistakes and repair connections is a skill set that will serve him better in his adult life than any click of the camera or stroke of the brush ever will. I mean, true. Randy, I have nothing to say. That struck Dad to the core. I could see him physically wince. He was trying to help. He really was. But he was unequipped to deal with the situations of the order of magnitude as I was. Mom wasn't any better. But Randy was a real one. He laid it all out. This was my chance to actually grow up and act like a real adult for once. I may have to recommend Randy for sainthood. The parents were far too good for this world, let alone me. But. Oh no. Why are people posting that at me? I'm an innocent little man. Oh no, please, hold on one moment. Mom and Dad, more Dad than Mom. I love it. I'm pretty sure she didn't like the idea of pulling me from St. Hammond either. Considered his words for a long moment before turning back to me. Inco, do you think he's right about this? Your mother and I haven't done everything we should have, but he's right. You're almost an adult. He probably actually is. I look like, again, 18, 19, 17 is the age for high school and middle of the year, of senior year, so, like, he's probably legally an adult. If not really close. Because Inco didn't skip a fucking grade. We have to let you make your choices and mistakes without us for now. Until now. Maybe it's wrong for us to start acting like we know better now. Don't double up on the now, but otherwise... Great. He looked tired. He probably was. I think he was growing up a little like me. I had a little deep, quiet resentments for my parents for a while now. Because, well, they pretty much abandoned me. And yet you loved their hug. I got why, but that didn't make it any better. I guess he was touch-starved. That might have been it. But I was trying to make an effort to fix my mistakes. To be an adult, even if it was painful. I shouldn't be denied that opportunity. And looking at my dad, I could see he was starting to go through that same journey now. It was weird, but also nice. It's kind of annoying that your dad's in the same character arc as you are, but, you know, you can share the limelight. Something we can look back to in a few years as equals together. But for now, Dad's personal journey of mistake fixing couldn't get in the way of mine. The pains and Olivia were too important for me. I pulled myself out of bed and stood my full height, which was only a hair taller than my father. I removed my prescription glasses and looked him dead in the eye. I couldn't see shit, but I looked. America does have some weird age things. You can buy guys. I think you can drive at 16. You can't drink until 21. Adult, I think, is 18 because you can vote. It's so goofy. It's just goofy, okay? Oh, that's some cute heart. Anyway, I just want to say, Luigi, I appreciate the fact that you wanted to say hi, Mario, this morning. Rawr. Probably would have been more dramatic without my newfound speech impediment, but I felt it needed to happen. That I need to be completely leveled with him. You can buy guns at 16. You can get everything you need for a drive-by shooting, but you can't drink until 5 years later. He held my gaze for a moment longer, and then looked over me completely. He took in the sad state I was in. Head bandaged, neck brace, black eye, hospital gown. He then turned to my mother, who had a sad, if determined, smile on her face. And finally, Randy. He let out a slow, long sigh. Why is that second comma there? Shaking his head. Okay, kiddo, I hear you. Now wouldn't be the time to shake up your life more. But you will be practicing defense against the dark arts, because I will try to avacadabra your ass next time. I felt a weight lift from me, and even Randy held a small, pleased smile. I guess we're doing another small victory. Probably too late for us to be acting like real parents anyways. On that one, I stopped him, and I jotted down a retort. It's not too late, but not right now. I can work on that later. He read my note, considered it deeply. The real reason, okay, there's another reason to be upset about the phone versus the fucking notepad. You can take the paper off the notepad and give it to someone, right? You can't do that with your fucking phone, Inco. You made this needlessly complicated. Ugh. You have to give people the text backlog so they can scroll back to see what was said. He read my note, considered it deeply, and then relaxed slightly. Okay. Yeah, later sounds good. Thanks, son. Okay, Inco, I think you earned your old man hug. I think